Go.
Hi friends! It's time for what we read.
Yes,
and
it
there's
is.
going to be a lot of those because we read a lot in the month that we were not on booktube.
Which is yay.
I mean, that's a good thing, right?
That's pretty much a good thing. Right.
We've been reading a lot of good books in November and December. So I guess I'm going to kick things off because I have quite a few to talk about. So
Go.
I'm just going to talk about a whole bunch of digital things that I read when we were on our flight to Australia, which is a very, very long
It's a pretty long
flight.
list.
The 4 books I'm going to mention in this first section are all from the same series. They're from the Fallen Angel series by J.R. Ward. I've actually talked about 2 of the books in this series already, but there are 4 more. Envy, Rapture, Possession, and Immortal. You'll see the picture like right here. I can't tell you much about their plots because a lot of it is going to be spoilery for books 1 and 2. So in general, I'll tell you what the series is about. It is centered around a character named Jim Heron, and he has been chosen as the pawn by both heaven and hell. He's going to be the one to influence souls to see if they're going to be a win for heaven or a win for hell. It depends on the choice that that soul ends up making. And so the entire series just follows him as he tries to get involved in the lives of these souls, or maybe he's already involved in them, you never know, in an effort to save the world from being completely taken over by hell. It's pretty formulaic. I mean, you can probably tell from the summary of that. There's an active player. He's trying to manipulate the game board so that heaven can win and hell will lose. There's interference in the form of other demons and angels who are sent to help. And he's also distracted by his own personal issues. But I think what J.R. Ward does extremely well is that each book is the same sort of formula in the story, but because the character, the soul in question that they have to influence, is different every time with different circumstances, that makes the story different each time and interesting each time. I do think that compared to her other series, the Black Dagger Brotherhood series, the Bourbon King series, the romances in this one are a little bit too unbelievable. They escalate so quickly. It's literally like a few days, less than a week, and it's like, I love you forever. For me, I'm just like, okay, I will accept all the swoony bits because like that's just what I'm reading this for, a part of what I'm reading this for anyway. But at the same time, like I would love to like fully be on board the ships, and I can't be that way when I'm like, you literally met 3 days ago. I can understand instant attraction, wanting to pursue the relationship, but when it's like declarations of I will love you until my dying day, I'm just like,
though that does happen.
I will admit it does happen, but like in fiction, sometimes the way it's executed isn't necessarily like the best, and in this case I think J.R. Ward didn't do it at her best. I much prefer how she does it in her other series where similar things do happen,
where like it's like that instant, oh my god, I'm gonna love this person forever,
but it feels like more believable to me. And in this case,
okay.
It was kind of like, but what I think is the win of the series is the theme, which is like exploring that gray area between what's good and what's evil, and seeing how everyone's different personal circumstances can shape those choices that you make.
That's pretty cool.
That was good. And I also really like that each of the characters had a different journey with that. Like they each had their own struggle to deal with, their own history that informed that struggle, and their own present circumstances that made it so difficult for them to make these decisions. It was pretty fun to read. It was so easy to binge just because they're so compulsively readable, like all J.R. Ward books and series that I have read so far. So if you're interested in the premise of it, I would still recommend checking it out, but it would be more of a borrow than a buy for me because it's not a story that I would see myself returning to now that I know how everything ends.
Ooh, that's a nice category. Borrow or buy?
That's what I'm going to talk about first, so we're going to let Mackie do a little bit, and then I'll go back into the other 2 books I have to talk about in this video.
So I really appreciate coming of age graphic novels, mostly because my childhood was relatively uneventful and friendless. So so anything of that sort of, well, not friend, I mean, you know, I knew people, but I knew people. I knew people, you know, I wasn't like,
Yes, people.
I was like isolated on the top of a mountain, just, you know, although I might as well have
Pulling
been
a Luke Skywalker.
Pulling a Luke Skywalker, we're fresh from watching all the movies. Anyway, point is, I thoroughly enjoyed these 2 graphic novels that we've been sent, so very happy to review them. So All Summer Long by Hope Larsson is a story about a couple of 13-year-olds who, well, mostly the one 13-year-old, Bina, every year with her best friend, as far as they could remember, because they were kids, like little kids when they met, had had a summer fun index or whatever the heck that is. It's basically them
like a summer list or something.
Yeah, it's basically them assigning like how many points of fun there are to certain specific tasks, and they sort of want to try to beat their fun record every year. But cool. This time, her guy friend.
Oh, it's a guy friend.
Is off to like soccer camp, and she's like, "Well, what about our fun index?" And he's like, "Hey, it was fun while it lasted." And so it's about growing up, and it's cool that it's not the shippy kind of, "Oh no, I'm just kind of droopy eyed for you." Friends. So it's really just friends and just growing up and just things changing.
That's interesting.
And I really appreciated it too because again, it's like I'm fascinated by childhoods that aren't mine.
Yeah.
Because mine was literally just like it was normal. Thank goodness. I mean, it was,
That's a blessing.
It's great, but at the same time, it's just like, well, what about the adventures and what about like the cool kind of? And so I didn't have any of that drama. So and plus she's a budding musician and all that. And she ends up trying to form her own band.
Okay.
It's kind of really, really cute. It's like slice of life for kids.
Ah.
You know,
American slice of
American slice of life. Yeah, there you go. I'm sorry, I know that's like a manga thing, but yes, this would come closest to a slice of life manga, but from a middle grade perspective. So very, very cool, junior high kind of thing. Another really cute one is called Be Prepared by Vera Brozgil. This is about a little girl who has Russian heritage.
Okay.
And goes to a summer camp designed by a bunch of folks who are Russian as well.
Okay, I don't know what that would entail, but okay.
Well, it's just, you know, the traditions are a little different. It's still like scouts and camping and whatever, but everybody
there's like extras.
Yeah, everybody speaks in whatever dialect of. I wasn't able to pick up. I don't know how many dialects there are. It's sort of in Russian, but you know, everybody speaks the language.
Okay.
So there's a lot of, you know, cultural nuance that obviously goes over my head because this is just like all fascinating. It's like, you know, it's pretty cool, and so it gives you that little bit of aspect of what it's like to grow up in that kind of environment. I can relate, as you know, being Asian, to everybody sort of knowing everybody's families, to being sort of
it's one of them.
you know, and everybody's families who send their kids to the same camp kind of deal, and you know, big clans, small clans, that kind of deal. And it's just her basically finding her way through this thing. She did not want to go to camp. It starts out like that, but then she finds sort of her place and things.
That's a nice story.
This is the kind of childhood that I'm fascinated by, but I did not want to live. Like, I want to live the one with the dragons and the thing, but this one is the like, I'm stuck with a bunch of like strangers in a cabin, well, actually in a tent in the woods.
Oh, even worse for you.
And I'm like some kind of young, and then everyone's a little older, and there's a lot of politics and there's a lot of issues. So this would not be the childhood I would want. I mean, it's fascinating, it's beautiful, it's a great tale. I would read anything else written by Vera Brozgil. This has replaced my foreign film phase.
Oh.
Where now it's just
it's the Russian.
Just give it to me in pictures. And let me just read through them, and it's really, really nice, rather than let me sit through 3.5 hours of, oh my god. So this is pretty cool. So I highly recommend it to anybody who, yeah, that's just, you know, you grow older, you have less time for things. So, but this I would recommend spending a little bit of time on.
The next book I'm going to talk about is a galley that I downloaded from Harper, which I'm grateful for. It's a book called A Constellation of Roses by Miranda Acevedo. Oh. This book was a surprise to me because I had enjoyed her debut novel. I thought it was really good, really compelling. She writes primarily contemporary stories, but there's like a touch of magic in them, and you're just supposed to go along with it, like as if it were a normal, everyday thing. And I love that kind of stuff. Like, I'm a sucker for it. This story in particular is like a very quiet YA version of a survival story, like a real-life survival story, because Trix has to learn how to survive a new normal life after living for so long, like on the road, on the run with her mom.
Okay.
Her mom has left her at the beginning of the book, and she's been making a life for herself because she has a magical talent. When the social services worker finally finds her and tracks her down, she tells her that she actually has more family that she didn't know about.
Wow.
And so she's taken to that town because she's still a minor, and she has to live out one entire year with that family. So it's a grandmother, an aunt, and a cousin, and they all live in this house. And so she is trying to navigate like this small town life with these people she has never met before, but who kind of show her the sort of family life that she's always craved for herself, the kind of roots and relationships that you could have. It's really interesting to me because it's one of those stories where like it's part finding your place in the world, which is great, but also like trying to make peace with the demons in your past. So things that you've done or things that have been done to you and how you respond to that. So Trix's response has always been to run. That's like her default, and now she's trying to learn how to change that response and try to find a way to stay. And this entire story is just told so beautifully, so compelling. The magical element of it is very, very minor, but it's so, like, I love it because it sort of reminds you of, like, let's just say if the whole family tree of the charmed ones was alive, like
the Warrens,
grandma, like everyone was there, and they all lived in a house, and they all had these like very minor abilities that they could use for like fun really things. Cool. Like it's so much fun to read.
Was, come to think of it, that was my childhood.
There you go. It's a really great story, not only for the endearing details that make this small town come alive and this family come alive, but also just the way that Acevedo, you know, portrays these relationships between these women. I'm always a sucker for family stories, and it's even more meaningful to me sometimes if it's all like females involved in this like in this family. It was very interesting just to see the ups and downs of their relationship and how Trix adjusted to all of that after so long without having that. It's such a good story. I would highly recommend checking it out. It's definitely a title that I feel should be getting more attention than it has. So good. Definitely check that out. And the last book we're going to talk about is a book that I was highly anticipating. It's The 10,000 Doors of January by Alex E. Harrell. I made the mistake of thinking that this one was a pure fantasy when I went into it. It's not. It's more like a historical fiction story with like a side of fantasy. If you know that going in, you'll probably be more inclined to like it. Luckily, like, it didn't bother me too much, but I know some other people were expecting like a full-on Portal story. It's not a full-on Portal story. It has Portal story elements in it, but it's not a full-on Portal story. This is basically a story about a girl named January. She lives in this house, and she one day discovers that she has the ability to discover these doors, and when she opens them, they take her to other worlds, other places, other worlds, so on and so forth. And she discovers a great many doors over the course of her lifetime. Her story is that she is still trying to figure out what happened to her father. Her father has disappeared a long time ago, and that's what she's chasing after in this entire story. And she thinks that, you know, maybe one day a door might lead her to the place that she's looking
cool.
for,
Yeah, Portal story.
which was pretty good. One of the problems for me with this book was that the writing style is not my cup of tea. It's very sparse, it's a little bit dry. It took me a long time to really be on board with January and her story, and even the other characters in it, I was just kind of like, okay. I thought the plot was pretty good, like the idea of it. Like I said, it's very compelling. There's definitely another B plot and a C plot in the story, and all of it was interesting to read. I think she did a good job with the magical stuff too. Like, the ability exists in the story, the door exists in the story, and then it is explained how it comes into January's life and why she's able to do these things, which I thought was pretty interesting and cool. Like, I wouldn't mind finding out that that was something I could do too. But I just, because I wasn't so emotionally invested, like on a personal level with these characters, and it always took me a while, like if I stopped reading it and then I picked it up again, it would take me a while to get back into the flow of this story. I kind of just feel like it didn't live up to the expectations I had for it, because I was really hoping for like the kind of story that would transport me as much as like The Starless Sea, which has a very similar like door theme to it. It was a good read, and I'm glad I checked it out. I would be curious to see what Alex E. Harrow does next. Those are my thoughts on this one.
Awesome.
And I think that's all we've got for today's What We Read.
Yeah.
It was
It's
a
nice,
quick one.
short and sweet. So if anybody else has anything that they want to say about them, any
Yeah, if you
similar
have any
books,
more coming-of-age graphic novels from Maki to recommend
I would
him,
love to,
he would
you know,
probably
check
love
those
that.
out.
And I still think you should read Miranda Acevedo's book, because I feel like it needs to be talked about more. It was just very enjoyable and very fun.
Awesome.
We'll see you guys in another What We Read soon.
Bye.
Bye.